Salida, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jim and welcome to the Sounds German review of the new album by Danger Dan, Reflexionen aus dem beschönigten Leben. Danger Dan, who was already active prior to forming it, is part of the German rap trio Antilopen Gang, which released my personal album of the year 2017, Anarchie und Alltag. Dan already released 2 EPs solo, but his last solo output is from 2012, so while Antilopen Gang grew more famous over the years, it became somewhat quiet around any solo efforts from him. That is until now, of course. Reflexionen aus dem beschönigten Leben is a full-length album though, and given how much I like the last Antilopen Gang album, I had very high expectations for this one. And Danger Dan didn't disappoint really. I mean, this feels and sounds a lot like an Antilopen Gang album, sans the vocals of 2 of its members of course. But the topics it tackles, how it tackles them, just the general aesthetic of the album, all that fits the formula the group has laid out last year already with Anarchie und Alltag. Dan looks not only at society, but also at himself, sometimes more and sometimes in a less serious manner. And the album shows this right from the get-go with the opening track Eine aufs Maul. You have a mid-tempo piano and slow-paced drums in the background. I'm not too keen on the auto-tuned vocals here for the beginning of the track or whatever kind of filtering they used, but in return I feel that the clean hooks come off as far more emotional and, as much as I hate to use this term here, honest than this first verse. Content-wise, this feels like a personal hard-hitter right away, like Dan confronting the person he once was, looking where that lifestyle would have led and just wants to punch them right in the face. But there is no aggressiveness to his vocals or presentation of this track. Instead, it's very much like insight and regret, looking back at how he once lived his life. The track Meine Heroin picks up the often used love are like drugs metaphor and elevates it to a different level than you might expect. The beat presents itself with this slightly scratchiness as an effect layered over a soft, groovy bass line and dreamy guitar riff, which slips into the background for the verses. Dan, meanwhile, does not only talk about the deep friendships and good moments, but also talks about emotional abuse that you just can't get away from, even going so far to state that he doesn't believe it's able to get away from it once you tasted the good stuff, as he puts it, but that you can live through it if you dose it right. It's a bleak ending to an only, well, kinda half-happy song that maybe nobody else would have made like this. 3 gegen 1 is a bit of a cheat, because he features Kolja and Panik Panzer on this track, meaning this is basically an Antilopen Gang song. And honestly, if someone would have played me this track and told me this is like a B-side song or a song that didn't make the cut for the album last year, I would have believed it instantly, because it just fits in so well. It's an aggressive offense against German gangster rappers, the values they represent through their personas and music, and while they don't name drop a single person, you can easily see who they are talking about if you know the scene just a little bit. Driving synth lines and basses with interspersed drum hits fit the aggressive mood just as much as the shouted parts of the hook. And when they say it's an honor for them to be enemies with these guys, I actually believe them, given their own image and behavior in the past, and it'll be curious to see if any other rapper will deliver an answer to this track in future. Wir lachen uns tot, a title based on a German saying in which you laugh yourself to death if you find something really funny, is one of the more critical songs against society itself. The beat is relaxed with what sounds like deep single notes from a bass guitar and gets broken up by some sort of eerie sound or scream sampled in for the hooks, but very much in the background. The song talks about a widespread phenomenon in which people basically close their eyes from death or even just simply bad things in the world in general, instead looking at funny shirts or fail compilations on the internet, ripping stupid jokes no matter what the situation is, or talking about that you can see a lot of smiles and hear a lot of laughter at funerals. While I I think that it's very obvious why people act like this. It can't be said about Dan that he doesn't hold a mirror to your face with this song, but as cleverly worded as this track is, it will probably not tell you some profound truth that you didn't know before. Very much in the spirit of Anarchie und Alltag, there's one track that completely goes against the grain and that will probably hit you very much from left field. On the last Antilopen Gang album, the album turned basically punk rock for one song. Here, Danger Dan goes into the unexpected direction of almost a cappella. Almost because for the last 90 seconds or so, instruments kick in, but even then, the a cappella foundation is still being audible in the background. Not only that, but this track features the Bastian Krumbiegel from the German pop band Die Prinzen, while the track is all about the development of this very band being a tragedy. It's entirely a joke song, and it becomes clear that the band this song is about is in on the joke too, which makes it just all the more entertaining. I wouldn't call a single track on this album a dud, but one song that got me scratching my chin is Sand in die Augen. Mostly because I can't for the life of me decide if it's meant seriously or not. If not, it's probably one of the best satires about gender, how children are raised with it, and all that kind of stuff that I have seen in a long time. If it's serious, I find it, at least in parts, very questionable. Dan rattles down typical decade-old cliches like the man is the doctor but the secretary is a woman, or boys play Batman and girls play princess. But then we get into frankly, well, as I said, questionable statements like the gender pay gap, where, funnily enough, Dan mentions the exact reason why it allegedly exists in the first place. And not to get too political here, but this is exactly one of those lines where I'm just not sure if this track is to be taken seriously or not. Somehow this song just feels off in the context of the whole album. Maybe because I would have expected a song like this to focus rather on the sexists than the possible victims of it, and sending them a stern message. And Dan does that in the last few lines of the track, even spitting on the sappy, kitschy love songs some German rappers dish out from time to time, or that people should tell their sons to ask before touching someone, you know? That is the sort of perspective I would have much rather expected here than what Dan ultimately delivered. Just like with his works for the Antilopen Gang, Dan manages to, for the very most part at least, not come off as arrogant or even narcissistic. It feels like he knows his weaknesses all too well and just decides to paint over them with some humor and uncouth phrasing here and there. But when he is honest with the listener, it comes off as honest and believable. Like for example with Private Altersvorsorge 2, a sequel to a track from his coming out EP, in which he addresses not only his past self but also his future self with a very grounded perspective. Which naturally doesn't hinder him from ripping a joke here and there, like him presuming that he will have a, quote, really embarrassing midlife crisis in 10 years' time. So, as a conclusion, this is a fantastic album and a big recommendation from my side, especially if you liked the last Antilopen Gang album. Reflexionen aus dem beschönigten Leben hits as hard as one would expect given the artist behind it. Dan walks a line between lighthearted humor and grave seriousness and manages this balancing act almost perfectly. Sure, he might not be the technical most impressive rapper around. One could argue that the beats on this album maybe sound a bit standard, that he doesn't break into new territory for the genre or the music or the art form itself. But the messages he delivers and how he delivers them made me look past these things with ease. And if you decide to check this album out and don't understand German, I'd highly suggest you punch those lyrics into DeepL, which is an online translator that is far superior to Google. It won't deliver perfect results, but it will deliver good ones, and it would be a shame if what Dan says would go past you. So, I hope you enjoyed this review, and if you did, please leave a thumbs up on the video, and if you didn't like it, we have a button for that too. And if you have listened to this album, feel free to tell me in the comments what you thought about it. And if you want at least one weekly music review from an artist or band you probably never heard about before, just subscribe to the channel. You can also follow Sounds German on Facebook or Twitter. I do usually post daily new music videos on there from all kinds of artists. I hope to see you again next time. Have a nice day. Salida.